Welcome to the Blade Lab. Today I'm going to be doing a review. I'm going to try to make it quick. This is concerning the Quiet Carry Knives Waypoint Large, which is what we see here. This is a knife, like all quiet carries that I know of, that is made in Taiwan, not China, but Taiwan. It was purchased by me as usual, nothing provided by any manufacturer, so this is my honest opinion. I've now had this for, I think, 2 or 3 weeks. I've been carrying it quite a bit, and I like it. So just the general overview. Let's look at the outside of this. So obviously this is a titanium frame, and it is a liner lock. You see that it has this fantastic quiet carry knurling on one side, on the show side, and these 4 dots here are sort of the quiet carry's signature. I think it's on all their knives. You can see that it is a suitable for lefties. The wire clip can be reversed onto the other side. On this side, we see a stonewash finish, which is very nice, but a little bit slippery. I really wish that they had, I know I'm not the first one to say this, but I wish they would do the knurling on both sides, or at least have, partial, on sort of like on the Quiet Carry 9, it has this sort of knurling that goes just along the top, and then on that one it has an inlay on the other half. But I think on this one, if they just did the knurling, sort of on the half or a third of the lock side, it would be good in terms of ergonomics, which I'll talk about later. But you can see that the construction is pretty basic. It is a liner lock, as I said. It has very few screws for disassembly. I believe they are all T8. Yeah, so there's a T8 pivot screw, there's another screw here, and one for the pocket clip, which does not have to be removed to disassemble the knife. It has a titanium, very kind of small titanium backspacer, but I guess it gives it some rigidity. On the show side, the only sort of tooling in the hardware that's visible is on that pocket clip screw. The other 2 are these Chicago screws. It has thumb studs. Nice feature on this one is that it has actual tooling on the thumb studs, so you can remove them pretty easily if you want to. If you want to refinish the blade, or some maybe sharpening could get in the way in some circumstances. So let's open her up, and what you see is a long knife. We'll get into the specifics in a little bit, but it's long. I'm going to compare it to the original Waypoint in a little bit. But so you have this really nice hollow grind, which comes down relatively thin. Not quite as thin as I would like, but I always want them to be thinner. It has a pretty functional jimping on the top. You can see that it's a thin knife overall. We'll get into the dimensions, and the blade stock is also super thin. You can see here, if the reflection allows, that the blade is made from Vanax Super Clean, like many quiet carry knives. Vanax, if you're not aware, is for one, it's sort of a pricey steel, but it has excellent, right up there with the very best corrosion resistance is kind of Vanax's superpower. To go along with that, it has pretty good edge retention and pretty good toughness. So it's comparable in a lot of ways to MagnaCut, except that it doesn't get quite as hard as MagnaCut. It's ever so slightly more corrosion resistant, even though MagnaCut is tremendously corrosion resistant itself. And It has equivalent, maybe slightly better edge retention, even though it doesn't get as hard as MagnaCut. So at say 60 to 62, Van Axe is about as hard as, or about as corrosion. I mean, get your thoughts straight, Blade Lab. At 61 to 62, the edge retention of Van Axe is about the same as, or slightly better than MagnaCut at 63 to 64, at least according to Larry Thomas's testing. So, yeah, out of box, the centering was good. Just checking it now. Might need to tighten up that pivot just a little bit. I have not mentioned that this knife is running on phosphor bronze washers. It takes a little while to break in, but since I have had this for a while, it is pretty well broken in now, and I can. It's never going to be fall shut. You can't really tell from this angle, but so it's not going to just drop. Although, yeah, no, but you can just shake it shut after it's broken in. When you first get it, it's probably going to be more of a, you're going to have to close it with a finger. But eventually they get smoother and smoother, and this one is now very smooth, just as smooth as my other washer Quiet Carry knives. So, yeah, let's just talk about what makes this knife special generally. Aesthetics obviously is subjective, but I think it's a great looking design. Obviously it's sort of long and thin. The materials are what probably make this and others in Quiet Carry's sort of Salt series super special. I've already talked about the corrosion resistance of the Van Axe. Titanium, of course, is corrosion resistant. All of the hardware on the knife, the screws, clip, etc., are made from marine grade stainless steel, so that's going to be very rust resistant. And even the lock bar is made out of LC200N steel, which is just as, if not even slightly more corrosion resistant than Van Axe. I think it's maybe identical. Anyway, close enough. Bottom line is, this is going to be a great knife for marine type environments, or if you're close to salt water, it's going to be extremely corrosion resistant. Yeah. So let's talk about the specs since we have it. It's hard to tell just in isolation. Probably the best way to do that would be to start off by, why don't we compare it to some knives that people know most likely. So this would be the Spyderco PM2. And what you see right off the bat is that the Waypoint Large is just slightly longer than the PM2, ever so slightly, and has considerably more edge than the PM2. Let's also compare it to the Demco 80-20.5, and you can see that I'm going to put them butt to butt. So yeah, the Waypoint Large is way larger than the Demco 80-20.5. And I think that's all of the comparisons I'm going to do outside of the Quiet Carry family. Hold for that. So let's just look at the thickness or lack thereof of this knife compared to these two. And you can see that it's extremely narrow. The Waypoint is only 0.375 inches thick, not including the pocket clip. So wafer thin, as they say. Let's take these two out. So I originally had purchased the Waypoint without the letter added to it, the original Waypoint, and I liked it a lot, but it is a little small for me. Not that I need more blade length than it has, really, but I just, aesthetically and just for whatever reason, I just tend to gravitate towards bigger knives. And as you can see, the Waypoint Large is considerably bigger than the original Waypoint. Honestly, if I had my preferences, I would have something kind of in between these two would be what I would prefer. But given that we have what we have, I much prefer the large. So this is really a case where it appears that they've just sort of scaled up the design of the original Waypoint without really making much allowance for the fact that it's going to be a different size. A lot of times I think that's a bad idea, because when you originally design a knife, you design it to be sort of ergonomic or to fit the hand based upon the size of your knife and your hand. And then so if you just put the grow ray on it or the shrink ray on it, and your hands are going to remain the same size, then you're not going to get the same ergonomics. I think that is partly the case here. Let me zoom out a little bit here so we have some more space. So obviously I have average till large size hands, and there is absolutely plenty of handle space for me. So if you have extra large hands, this is going to probably be a good knife for you. You can also climb up on this. And it feels okay, just holding it actually is fine. I have no complaints about that at all. There are like no hot spots. It is thin, so it's not going to be the most obviously hand-filling knife ever. But where it can get a little awkward is sort of in the opening and closing process, because it is just like a big kind of rectangle in your hand. Not bad by any means. I mean, it's a real nitpick, but yeah, it's fine. It just doesn't feel quite as hard to describe, as sort of fluid as handling the smaller sized one, but that's going to be the case with any bigger knife. So that was kind of a wasted diversion. Let's move on to comparing it to the Quiet Carry Drift. And this is the original Drift, which you can also see is a way smaller knife. In fact, let's put all three of them here on the screen at the same time. So yeah, the Drift was always shorter than the Waypoint, but obviously wider. I like all three of them, honestly. And there is also now a Drift large size, which is going to be scaled up very much like this one was, and it's still going to be a little shorter than the Waypoint large, but considerably wider. So I would love to handle that, but couldn't make it happen right now. Maybe one day. One thing while I have all these things out here that I'd like to talk about is the knurling. As I said, I really love Quiet Carry's knurling. It's very grippy without being too abrasive, and I think it just looks great. But one thing I noticed with this one, I don't know if we're going to be able to see it here, is it appears to me that they've kind of scaled down the knurling. It looks like I have no idea how this is going to show up on camera, but yeah, it just looks to me like it's a finer knurling pattern than on the previous versions. And it's not a big difference, but I have a slight preference for the wider knurling on the older ones, for what that is worth. All of these knives have the same thickness, or thinness, I should say, both in terms of blade stock and the overall thickness. So just line them up like this. Put them as close together as I can. So basically they're all going to, in terms of thickness, they're the same. What more can I say about that? Nothing. So we won't. Let's talk about the actual dimensions of this knife. So it is 8.5 inches overall. It is the blade length on this one is 3.7 inches. That is overall and also the cutting edge. As I said, it's 0.375 inches thick. The weight is 3.4 ounces, so it has an excellent blade length to weight ratio. It's actually, the ratio comes out where it weighs less than the blade length, which is pretty unusual. So if you're into the light knives, this is going to be one that appeals to you. The blade stock thickness, super thin. It is. I measured this at 0.84 inches. 0.084 inches. I think the average blade stock thickness is about, maybe 0.135, so considerably thicker than this. It's just for reference, let's compare it to the 80-20.5, which itself is not a super thick knife. Okay. We can also compare it to the thickness of the PM2, which again, not super thick, not super thin, but this is super thin. So as a result of that, it's going to be an excellent slicer, and that's of course aided by the fact that it has this sort of pretty deep hollow grind. So I love that about it. From the factory, it was sharpened at 20 degrees per side. It was, I don't have it right here, I think it was reasonably sharp out of the box, not super sharp. I have, since I got it, I've resharpened it to 16 degrees per side, which is closer to the angle that I prefer. Even, well, let's see, at 20 degrees per side, it was 11 thousandths of an inch behind the edge, which is very thin and slicey. It's actually a thinner grind than my previous Quiet Carries, any of them. I have the two you've seen, and I also have the Quiet Carry 9, which is not sort of the Salt series, so I'm not doing that as a comparison. But yeah, so it's super slicey. I measured the hardness of this knife using a Lieb hardness tester. I think it's accurate. Whether you do or not, that's up to you. But I got a reading of 60.9 HRC. The other two Vanax Quiet Carry knives that I have, I measured at exactly 61 HRC. So between the three of them, they were all essentially 61 HRC plus or minus 0.5 HRC, 0.05 HRC. So let's just say Quiet Carry is doing their Vanax at 61 HRC, because that appears to be the case. That is a good number. That's probably the higher end of what you can expect from Vanax, being a steel that just doesn't get super hard. So kudos to them for that. The blade shape it's obviously I guess, I don't know what you would call it, it's almost kind of a clip point, or I don't know if it's a clip point or a drop point, call it a clop point, call it what you will, but it's a very useful design. It has a lot of straight edge for sort of cutting through cardboard or fish or whatever you're going to be cutting that's long, but it also has enough belly to where you're going to be able to cut pretty well on a cutting board. So great in those terms. It also has a pretty nice pokey tip. We're not going to, okay. In terms of the thickness of the tip, it's relatively delicate, but it's not, I've certainly seen thinner. So you can be able to use it. You certainly won't want to be prying chunks of ice apart or anything with it, but I wouldn't worry too much about using it just for doing sort of detailed cuts. I already touched on the ergonomics of it. Ergonomics are fine. I don't really feel that pocket clip in hand. If for whatever reason you wanted to do the sort of reverse grip, that feels fine too. If you want to do this sort of pull cut, feels fine. You know, it's obviously a completely neutral handle except for the this sort of choil here where your index finger fits in. Like I said, you can also sort of choke up pretty comfortably and get right behind the edge, so that's good. What else do we have? Oh, pocket clip, wire clip. Not my favorite kind of clip, but as they go, Quiet Carries are probably my favorites. It is pretty rigid. You know, a lot of them will sort of have side-to-side flex. This one and Quiet Carries in general are pretty rigid, so that's cool. It is reversible, as I said. The tension is good. It works great in and out of pocket. No complaints there. It is quite deep carry. You know, obviously you're only going to see a very smidge of knife once it's in your pocket. It's also relatively short, which I like. So it sort of stays out of this part of your hand where they can dig in if they stick up the way this one does. But it's far enough back so that it's kind of in the kind of meat of your palm and it doesn't really bother you. So that's excellent. Action and acoustics I've already talked about a little bit, but they're great. You know, in a sense, it depends on whether you like washer knives versus bearing knives. It's the washer knife is almost never going to be as sort of free-falling and as a bearing knife, but they are smoother in a different sort of way. You know, it's a more of a consistent action, I find, usually, and that is certainly the case with Quiet Carries. So I think it's excellent. Acoustically, I think the sounds are very good. It's I would say on the louder side of the overall loudness scale. Lockup sound. Let me get closer to my mic here. Lockup sound is good. In terms of lockup, we have, I would call that maybe 60%, 70%. It is solid. There's absolutely no play side to side or up or down. Being a thin knife, if if I was to really jam on it, I could probably bend the thing, but I won't be doing that. Pivot play. Can you hear that? Yeah, there's a little bit of slop in the pivot. Doesn't really affect the function of the knife, but you know, if you want to know, now you know. In terms of detent play, there is none. It's very crispy detent. I would say the detent strength is perfect for this type of knife. Obviously, it has the thumb studs. Whoops. Why do I always blow it as soon as I start talking about the thumb studs? Anyway, so you can sort of get this with the back of your nail, or you can get it with kind of the meat of your thumb. I saw somebody review this saying that they couldn't reverse flick it. I don't really understand that. It obviously has this little sort of cutaway, so you can sort of catch the bottom of the thumb stud. What I use is the meat of my finger, and it's very easy to reverse flick it for me. So it might just be something that takes a little practice if you're not familiar with the knife, but it's very doable. Actually, comparing it to the original Waypoint, I prefer the action and the access to the studs better on the larger one, because the whole thing is scaled up, and I always felt that this one was a little bit cramped, just in terms of being able to get into the studs, and especially on the back side. Yeah, I can get it, but it's tight, and I think the detent is a little harder on my original one. I don't know if that's true across the line, but so generally I think that is one area where just sizing it up has been beneficial. just in terms of access to the thumb studs. So I'm going to wrap up this review there. I think I would say that this knife is highly recommended by the Blade Lab. Materials are awesome. The action is great. I think it's very good looking. And especially if you're in a marine environment, this is going to be an excellent choice for you. If you're looking for a knife this size, the obvious comparison would be the Drift Large. Sadly, I can't compare them directly, but it will probably come down to whether you sort of prefer the long, thin style with a hollow point, or the sort of wider knife with the almost full flat grind. So that's going to be the main difference. I should have mentioned that this one, the one I have here, has the stonewash blade, which I like a lot. It also comes in a I think it's a belt grind, or satin anyway, satin blade. Also comes with, I believe you can get this with the black handles. I really prefer the silver, but that's up to you. I will put a link to the knife on Quiet Carry's website. These, I don't know if they're available at this particular moment. If it isn't, I believe you can sign up for notifications. They come back in stock periodically. It's not the easiest knife to obtain, but it's certainly not impossible by any means. It's just a question of you might have to wait a couple of weeks or a month, but eventually they do come back in stock and you can get them. So thank you for joining me, and until next time, please hit the like button down below. That's that thumbs up thing. And if you like this content, I also do a bunch of sharpening content. Please subscribe to the channel, because I will be back with more fascinating stuff like this. Y'all have a good one. Bye.